Hello, my name is Dr. Stephanie West, and today we're going to talk about project-based learning. Now, project-based learning is a big buzzword in education right now, but what is project-based learning and why should we be using it? What is the benefits? So let's take a look at this. Now, if we go back to John Dewey in 1920, he says learning should be grounded in experience and driven by student interest. He goes on to say education is not preparation for life. Education is life itself. So when we look at project-based learning, it is student-centered, it's inquiry-based instructional model, and it's authentic learning. Now, authentic learning means that when students identify the gaps in their knowledge, conduct research, and apply their learning to their everyday life and learning, then they grow academically and their intelligence grows. So let's look at this. Now, the project approach started out in medicine, engineering, and economics. As it moved into the K-12 education, it evolved into a method of instruction focused on core content that was rigorous, relevant, and very hands-on. Now, here's a lot of information about the project approach. And it started with the constructive theory, this hands-on approach where kids come to school with the quest to understand their life and those things around them. We need to remember that school is life and that their time in school is 80% of their day. So this is their life at the time. So we need to be constructing their knowledge as the teachers facilitate, not be lecturing all the time. Let's learn through experience. Let's learn through building our experiences through different things. And this is why the diversity in our schools can be used as such an advantage, because we can bring in the diversity of thinking, the interests, the backgrounds, which when we utilize diversity, our instruction grows, our students grow more aware of those around them, and their empathy to one another, their social and intelligence and emotional intelligence grows. All of those things grow. So we also need to remember that our classrooms are flexible learning spaces. Gone are the days when we have rows. Gone are the days when maybe we have individual desks. I have seen tables used clear through the high school. I've used grouping. When I was a high school English teacher, I used groupings of four or five in a group with their desk, of course, because that's all I had. But I had a teacher down the hall that used long tables. But the room needs to be flexible. You need to be able to move things aside if you need to, push the desk out, push the tables out, whatever they do. But when you use the project approach, make sure that you are being flexible within what you're thinking of what the classroom should look like. So we're going to talk about PBL, and we can break it down into 6 easy steps. This will give you the ideas of how to design, implement, and guide your students through the PBL process. So step 1, identify the outcomes of the unit. This can be standards-based, collaborative, research, problem solving, and it should be where they're acquiring content knowledge. So think of your standards, and that's the content you need to cover in your class, or the content in your curriculum guides at your district. Every district has them. And then before you even start, think of how are you going to assess the students at the end. Self and peer evaluations, learning reflections, writing samples, and rubrics are key to a successful PBL unit. So keep those in mind as you go through and really look at the targets that you want to hit and what's the best way to assess the students at the end. So step 2 is you're going to design the scenario. So design the unit based on an embedded problem that will emerge through student brainstorming. These are real complex issues related to your course content. The key here is the scenario should elicit the types of thinking, discussion, research, and learning to meet the outcomes. And it needs to be motivating, interesting, and generates discussion. Because if you throw something boring out there, let's face it, they're not going to do it. So let's take a look at a few ideas. Now, project-based learning, I have seen and used clear down into kindergarten. When I was a kindergarten teacher, we did projects like this. So how to grow a garden, keeping the world clean, planning a Mars community. We had a whole unit on outer space. I know a lot of teachers love the dinosaurs. You could do something with dinosaurs. How did they come? How did they go extinct? Whatever. And a lot of these units, they were considered fluff, but if you do it right, and you connect it to your standards, you can do almost whatever you want in these project-based units. Now let's look at 3rd through 5th. You could create an interactive family tree with pictures, video, whatever. Population growth. You can define, analyze, and visualize an abstract concept like freedom, patriotism, anything like that. When we get up into the secondary, we can make it a little bit harder. Artfully illustrate the global history of human and civil rights. Now, when we talk about artfully, this is bringing in a lot of color, magazine clippings maybe, a lot of drawing maybe, graphic arts on the computer. Develop a feasible response to potential asteroid-Earth collisions. How fun would that be? I can just see your 8th grade kids going nuts for that one. And perform a cause-effect analysis on a local concern. So here I am in Arizona. Our concern is water. Our weather is weird this year, and we're a little low on water, so you can talk about drought. You may be in an area where there's hurricanes. What would you do in the case of a hurricane? So think of it that way. 9th through 12th grades, design the next Google. Could you imagine what they come up with at this age, designing the next Google? Start and run a profitable business. I've seen this done several times, and it's so great for them to see what it takes to have a job, hold a job, but then to run a job that's successful, or run a business that's successful, and then create a photo documentary and then turn it into a film. The kids love to use videos. They videotape everything. They take pictures of everything. Could you imagine what the outcome of this would be? Such a cool thing. So step 3, let's introduce the PBL. If your students are new to this practice, and especially in the younger ages, you may want to just start with an easy problem, such as long lines in the cafeteria. How are they going to figure out how to fix long lines in the cafeteria? Now you will need to group the students. Rule of thumb for myself, I never put more than 4 or 5 in a group. That seemed to be the best. And be careful with your leaders of your class. You don't want 2 leaders in one group, or they kind of run over the top of each other. Be careful not to have too many of your low students in your groups either. So I usually, in my groups, I would do one leader, 2 middle-of-the-road kids, and 2 low kids. So you still have role models, but the middle kids and the upper kids can really help the lower kids move along. Introduce the assignment, expectations, the rubrics, the timeline, how this is going to run every day, anything like that. Kids love structure. So introduce them. Be very clear on how this is going to run. And then allow the time, your groups. So get them into groups and then give them the scenario and allow the time for the kids to read through the scenario. So they kind of know what's going on. And this may take a while. This may be one day that you're doing in your class if you only have them for like a class period of an hour. Maybe this step 3 is the whole class period, just to get things down and rolling. Step 4, this is where you're going to start your group brainstorming. The groups are going to define the problem. They're going to figure out what it is. What do they know about the problem? What do they need to learn about the problem? And where do they need to look to find information and data about the problem? Groups will then make assignments with one another to research the project. So they all should have group assignments. In my planning guide, I put down some of the ideas for group assignments. So you can look at the planning guide if you'd like to look at that. The product performance is step 5. This is where you're going to start to see all of it come together. Now your step 4, if we go back to step 4, this may take a while. Now this part and the research part just takes, at least a week maybe during the time that you're putting it together. And then step 5, you probably need another week for them to put all of their stuff together. And then set performance times. Have them get up and really perform and present their findings. So think of projects you can create that synthesizes the research, solutions, and learning. I think this comes like a science fair. When I think of a research fair, I think of a science fair or the end step in a PBL project. This is where the kids get to display what they've learned. I've also seen where they invite the parents in for the research fair, which is so much fun. We did country reports. When I taught 6th grade, we did country reports, and the kids had to pick a country. There were groups of 4 or 5. No, actually, there was just groups of 2. So we just did 2, so we'd have a lot of displays. And then we had a country fair where the kids had to dress up in the garb of their country. They brought food in their country. They had a 3-tiered bulletin board thing. Those display boards, you guys know what I'm talking about. And they showed off all their research and everything, and it was a great family night with the kids. And these can be anything you want. If you don't want to go that far, they can be posters that you put on the board. We did a whole thing when I taught high school English. We did a whole thing on Shakespeare and the theater that he used. And I had some kids, they had to bring a presentation of the Globe Theater. And some made like popsicle sticks of the theater. Some had dioramas. Some had just drawings of the theater. So think of that. Think of what is your outcome? What do you want your kids to know? And come up with those types of things to do. Again, the kids love videos. And they're really good at PowerPoint presentations. Clear down into like 4th, 5th grade, they really get into PowerPoints. And then, of course, step 6 is your assessment. How are you going to evaluate the kids? And this is really good for rubrics. Make sure your rubric is in step 1 so the kids know what's expected of them from the very beginning to the very end. This is key to their learning because you never want to shock kids with assessments. Don't ever throw something at the end of the program or the end of the unit where you're shocking kids. It's really not fair. So use these rubrics. And a good practice here is reflections on their learning. This can be an essay. This can be through a prompt, a writing prompt in their journals. This could be a form they fill out at the end. However you want to run it, and depending on the age, you may want to run it a little different. So we went through the 6 steps, and here's the benefits of PBL. This is where it is so beneficial to the kids' learning, where the teacher is the facilitator. I mean, the days when you do PBL, your days just fly by. It's amazing how hard the kids work when they have a project that they are so attached to, and the days just fly by because it's student-centered, and then sit back and watch the critical thinking that's taking place, the research that's taking place, the synthesis that's taking place. It is the most rewarding projects you will ever do. And then these real life scenarios leads to learning retention. When students can connect their learning to their real life, that's when retention happens. So when we talk about preparing students for tests, we can do that. In a way, we have to do that, but we can do that with real life scenarios and how to research, how to summarize information. Think of all those reading and writing skills that you do. Math, you could do an engineering project, where they have to use angles to build a bridge. They have to use calculations and area, parameters, anything like that. You can think of PBL in those things where they're constantly hands-on researching and doing this and making it fun for them. I appreciate your time spending with this project-based learning. Here's my website if you'd like to subscribe and receive all of my emails. Also, I have a project-based learning planning guide that is placed on this this website here, my downloadable lesson plans, for a very low price. So if you want the whole planning guide, which will walk you step by step with handouts, outlines, everything that you need to make this worthwhile. I hope that you've enjoyed this time with me with project-based learning, and I hope to see you again. Thank you.